All right. Well, we're done. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. It's February 25th, the regular meeting of the Planning Commission. We'll take a roll call and we don't have an agenda in front of us, but I'm assuming really the only thing on it is the work session.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Darrell Reed, District 1. Me, District 1.
Lance Home, District 2.
Lane Bonus, District 2.
Kate Darlington, District 3.
David Merrick, District 3.
Sean Gardner, Planning.
Brittany Hayning, planning.
Kelson Hatter, planning.
Everett Neal, County Code Compliance. Christopher, Emergency Management.
All right, anyone have any additions to the agenda they want to add before we get going?
I just have a little bit of staff update.
Sure. Yeah, okay. We'll get going with our work session, which is best related again, right? Are we trying to cover anything
Yeah.
besides best today?
That's it.
Okay.
God help us with this. It was real. I wasn't sure what to do with these things. I'm gonna have Everett kind of help me. Usually I go through, section by section. We're going to do this again. Apologize. My God, this is what, the third time? But we got a lot of new input that last time, last work session. And also the county attorney did some review. And SEI kind of provided us with some feedback on the regs. And then Alluvial, who was here with a consultant, also provided some red lines as well. So there's a bit to go through, and I wasn't sure how to do it. Like the draft we have is starting to get cluttered, with all kinds of comments, and I had blended two drafts together with, the yellow was the second draft where I injected, other text. It's just getting messy. I'd like to unmess it, and so this is the start of that attempt. Okay, so what I did on this handout here. I did send all this, right? I think I sent it in advance.
I got it. I don't
I don't know
know.
if you get any chance to read this or if it made any sense to you, but basically I just try to take section by section and then provide the three kind of sources of comments we got section by section. That's a lot. Okay, so I don't know if that helps. This is the easiest way I could think about kind of presenting the input we got.
Yeah, it was helpful to me.
But sometimes, like Alluvial, really had some suggestions that were like big edits, like
Yeah.
take this whole section out because NFPA covers it or something. And I don't have exhaustive NFPA, knowledge or comprehension or time to have really looked at it. But that's gonna be going on as we go through this. I got this thing pulled up here, so I might join the meeting as Everett goes through section by section. He's gonna help me kind of read and go through it and then lead the discussion. And then I'm gonna be the editor, kind of making the revisions to the master document, master draft. If that's okay. Is
Sure.
that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna join the meeting while you guys get started, then go ahead.
All right, so I'm guessing we're probably not ready for the table 2B just yet.
No.
I think it's.
One day we'll get there.
I say we bypass H1.
I think actually, let's just go to development standards. Like, do you have one of these? Everett? We should get you one. This one right here, it really starts where the edits really start. You don't have one. Is it an extra one?
It's Tony.
Okay, good. So that's where like the edits really start. Well, actually, sorry, let me just jump in and just say that SEI had suggested that we had, we got point A, point B, and then point C they added for battery technology classification. And so I think this was a little caveat that they emphasized in their little presentation was that we really need to address battery energy storage regulations based on the battery technology being used. So they interjected here on this first page of suggested edits best shall be classified by battery technology and chemistry for purposes of applying sighting, safety, fire protection, and mitigation requirements. Technologies include but are not limited to lithium ion, NMC, NCA, LCO, lithium iron phosphate, sodium ion batteries, flow batteries, and emerging or hybrid technologies evaluated using a hazard-based approach consistent with NFPA 855. So that's an additional, section, right? We have the applicability section, we've got the exceptions section, and now they're suggesting injecting this other section in more on battery technology classification. That's the first consideration, and that's probably the way we'll have to go through this if they go by this document.
That's fine, because I can see where to start from again.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking I'm gonna do is I'll read where it says development standards and where there's notes. I'll read the current information that we have regarding that section, then I'll read the notes that they recommended. So section D for development standards, as it's written, development standards, the following use standards apply to all utility scale BESS facilities and shall be demonstrated within the conditional use permit application for the facilities. Section I, installation, design, maintenance, and safety standards. Section 4.5 through 4.9.4 of NFPA standard 855, as may be amended from time to time. Compliance with these standards is the requirement of all battery energy storage systems permitted.
Different than the version I have in front of me, but some wording is different than what we're looking at that we were printed.
That's not my fault, I'm reading what he gave me.
It's close.
All right.
It's
talking about-
it's close.
Is it close?
I'll make notes, I guess, if it's way off, but
Let me,
Yeah.
hold on a second
and mostly just wondering if Everett has the most
it
current.
does have the most current. This was the last draft that we left off with.
Yeah.
I think Everett has the most current, and I should probably print that off for you all.
Can we pull it up on the screen?
We can, yeah, let me get
We
on
we
there.
can also take 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like this one has the 2023 edition still in it, and here you said you took it out.
Well, these are the
Yeah.
notes.
okay, is that what was left out?
Well,
Well,
The
no.
county attorney made a couple of suggestions, and I just kind of went with him and took it out of the additional.
At first I thought he was paraphrasing,
Oh, really?
because it like, you can follow along and get the gist of it, but the words he's speaking are different than the words we're reading.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good.
Okay, sorry, give me just. Give me just a minute then to think of what happened there. Okay. I'll share my screen of the edition that Everett's reading. I kind of did this a week and a half ago, and I can't forget what the heck I did, I'm sorry.
Or it's hard to keep track.
Okay, so this is the edition that he's reading. And it's different than what you got on, and you're on section D.
Section D, development
Yeah.
standards.
All right, so I did update this a little bit, like I stuck in that suggested section C from SEI in here.
and we don't see that on there.
Yeah, you don't see
Yeah.
that, because this is the last draft that you all touched and looked at before.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, let me just take off, hard to see that, you can maybe see it the best on the big screen over there, but. What the heck did I change?
Well, like this, that most current version said in installation design and maintenance says sections 4.5 through 4.94 of NFPA 855 as may be amended from time to time. It's like more verbose on there. We have the one we have says 4.5 through 4.9.4 of NFPA standard 855 2023 edition are hereby incorporated by reference. It looks like you took out
Okay.
by reference there.
Or if I did a little bit of editing at the very beginning and then changed my mind to not do that. So I'm hoping that like going forward, it's not like this. But,
So, question on that particular,
yeah,
if we're ready for questions.
yeah, let's go just this installation, design, maintenance and safety standards. Is that what you're looking at? Tom?
We switched from referencing NFPA standard 855 by reference to mandating these systems to be built according to those standards. Initially, my understanding was we didn't feel like we could do that because we don't have a building department.
I can
So-
read the attorney's note.
So the attorney's note here over in your notes, yeah, it says. He removed the 2023 edition reference and he said we can just reference the standards. If they are amended, then we don't have to amend our code. The developer will have to comply with the standards in place at the time of development. We are not incorporating by reference. That would involve adopting the standards as a fire code, et cetera. We are just requiring the developer to be in compliance with the code and provide us proof. And so I don't know why I have some additional verbiage in here though, dang it. I guess it's just the last sentence, right? The last sentence in there, the best developer shall provide a certificate of compliance from a third party evidencing compliance with these standards.
Well, a copy we've got says that the NFPA is hereby incorporated by reference, and that's.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
that's been struck.
So I like that.
That's been struck.
Yeah.
I don't know where I got this thing of the best developer shall provide a certificate of compliance from a third party evidencing compliance with these standards, but I kind of like it.
Well, that's how it would be done with a consultant. There would be the actual inspector on our part indicating that everything's been done according to the NFPA, UL and all the standards incorporated.
Yeah, I just wish I could reference where I got that from, but I don't know. Let's see if we continue to have this problem. How do you feel about this as it is written up there, highlighted in the blue? And not on your draft here.
I guess the only question I've got is it, mold and converted that, but it says, a third party evidence compliance. Is that, what does that mean by third party? Does that need to be?
An inspector.
Well,
You gotta have a licensed inspector to
So-
be able to read it.
So should it say licensed inspector or something?
It
instead
says
of
they
third party?
certified. Though they have to write us certified, but I think we do need to indicate that it is a professional standard that we're using an outside consultant who is licensed to make the inspections of these facilities. That's I know the gist of what he was trying to say. The idea is we want a third-party inspector who is licensed and knowledgeable of these BESS units, that when they're putting it in, he's gonna be our consultant for the project. So at the end, he's the one who's gonna sign off saying they've done their work, they say they're certified, and I'm certifying, I agree with that certification as a third party. So we're not relying on the developer to provide their own certified personnel without a double check. I know that, I think that was the intent.
that sounds like the intent. I'm just not sure where I got that kind of language from. Sorry about that. I mean, SEI had proposed the following alternative for this specific section. That battery energy storage systems shall be designed, installed, operated, and decommissioned using a hazard-based framework consistent with the intent of NFPA 855 applied in a manner appropriate to the specific battery technology, system configuration, and site conditions. So that's a complete different write-up for that section.
Remind me, SEI versus Alluvial, they're both consultants.
SEI is Solar Energy International based out of Paonia, and they're an educational, they're a provider for renewable energy.
Okay.
So, and they serve as consultants and educators in the renewable energy sector. And they do that for more than just, residential or like commercial use, but also for like actual utility scale projects. And they do it international, as is implied by their title. And then alluvial is the one that put in Garnet Mesa. And the guest that they brought was a consultant that represented like battery suppliers. You weren't here for that, huh? Yeah, you weren't here for that.
I got the impression that SEI was focused more on the residential install.
They were here to advocate, to make sure that
Yeah.
that the regs allowed for that. Because that's kind of their local bread and butter. And
Right.
They had local installers that were here with that interest, But their expertise, their subject matter expertise.
It's greater than that.
Yeah, it's greater.
They just didn't speak to that. I mean, it seemed like alluvial spoke to the
Yeah,
utility grade and they spoke to the residential.
but in their suggested edits, they did kind of
they?
speak to that a little bit, yeah.
Well, on that point, when they say, I guess the SEI seems a little wishy-washy here, consistent with the intent,
Mhm.
Correct.
which then is, then somebody has to interpret, is this consistent with the intent or is it consistent with?
Perhaps that was their attempt, not. It's in trouble with incorporating by reference or, requiring a code that we haven't adopted or something.
I think their big emphasis too that they made when they presented was that they wanted to emphasize in a manner appropriate to the specific battery technology.
Yes,
Yeah.
That was a big point they made,
Mhm.
system configuration and site
Mhm.
conditions. So that last
right,
clause or so seems like a,
right. What if you just dropped out intent? It'd just be consistent with the
Mhm.
NFPA 855 applied in a manner appropriate to the specific battery technology.
Well, we could also just use John's language saying
Yeah,
you're required, the developer is required to be in compliance with the code. With the 855 code, just be required to be in compliance
Yeah.
with 855.
do we need to even reference sections then?
I would get away from section.
I would too.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
855 is all encompassing, it includes UL, NFPA, it incorporates several sections of code, and we don't wanna be specific, cause then they'll say, well, that code wasn't mentioned.
right. And if there's a revision to the code and then the numbers change,
Correct.
then we're out of sync.
I think just saying NFPA as a whole
Yeah,
will alleviate that particular issue.
And I feel like, I mean, I might be wrong, but I feel like we could take out the words as may be amended from time to time, like I
Yeah.
think that's implied.
Well, yeah, the whole first sentence needs a rewritten.
So-
Making sense, not even a complete sentence as it is on the addition I got up there.
How about,
Well, I mean, I really like what SCI proposed. If you take out consistent with the intent and just put in compliance with NFPA 855 or something of that nature.
All right,
energy storage systems shall be designed, installed, operated, and decommissioned in a manner consistent with NFPA 855.
okay. Applied in a manner appropriate to specific battery technology and all that,
I
right?
would stay with the word compliance.
All right, yeah, so.
Okay, shall be designed, installed, operated.
How about all battery energy storage systems shall be compliant with NFPA 855.
Okay. Just leave out all the verbs designed, installed, operated, decommissioned, just say shall be compliant with, right?
Yeah.
Cause there is a decommissioning language in 855 as well as installation.
We have decommissioning language somewhere else in it seems, the
Yeah.
decommissioning language seems to be like not quite for this part, but.
Shall be compliant with NFPA 855 and then attach on that last clause at SEI. Applied in a manner.
Yeah,
That's fine. I mean, I
Yeah.
can just cross out all that and just be like compliant with NFPA 55 then. So then, what about the best developer shall provide a certificate of compliance from a third party?
I think we all, or I shouldn't speak for all of us, it seems like that needs to be somewhere.
Okay, I got
We need
that.
to make sure that third party is.
but yeah, specify,
Are we sure that NFPA 855 is all encompassing?
Yeah, it's very.
That's
hard.
the way these industry experts presented it as, like, it's like constantly working to keep up with the changing, evolving battery technology, and it practically accounts for, you know, all the things that we're trying to account for, so it's safest to refer to it as the standard. And then also the UL standards.
So how about all BESS installations shall comply with the currently adopted editions of NFPA 855?
The currently adopted editions, I like that.
But we're not adopting.
No, the currently,
NFPA is gonna be.
the currently adopted NFPA, not our adoption.
Cause I don't know if they adopt or if they just
Or
like.
just the
Yeah, right,
current,
they just say it's changed, this is the addition.
just,
Because adopting is like a.
I think they used the word addition.
just say with the current NFPA 855.
Sure.
Okay, all right, so that's how I have it is SEI, or, sorry. Battery energy storage systems shall be compliant with the current NFPA, the current NFPA 855 standards. Applied in a manner appropriate to the specific battery technology, system configuration, and site conditions. And then this last sentence, the best developer shall provide a certificate of compliance from a third party evidencing compliance with these standards.
But we've got to describe that third party.
All right, well, how do we do that?
Qualified?
Well, I think they're certified, it's like electrical inspections, you have a certified electrician who's currently licensed. And it's the same idea, just a higher scale, almost to an engineering level. Do you have a definition?
so the best developer shall provide a certificate of compliance from a qualified third party evidencing compliance with the. It seems a little redundant to say a certificate of compliance evidencing compliance. Maybe just. They shall provide a certificate of compliance from a qualified third party.
Prior to the issuance of any conditional use permit for a BESS system, the applicant shall obtain and submit a written certification verified independent qualified third party verifying the proposed system complies with the requirements of this code and all references.
That's in an FPA already right there, huh? What is that?
That's it.
It's fair.
Well, how did you get it to write that? What was your input?
I just said we want required certification of third party, and how do we word that? It's in a chapter, I've been specifically asking questions. That's what I know for.
I gotta come up with a way to like grab that stuff now. What do I do?
Email.
Well, don't email it. If you keep doing ChatGPT throughout this whole thing, you're gonna have 50 emails with ChatGPT.
Well,
Well, hold on,
we have
I'm
a
thinking out
policy
loud, you
issue on
know?
that too, for the county.
Yeah, we do have a policy.
ChatGPT is not our allowed use.
Well, when we use language from AI, we have to cite it as such, and I don't, you know, all that, yeah.
I feel like it was a little
That was.
too verbose, but I like the
Yeah.
word independent. I feel like that was an important,
Rather than
Concept.
third party.
or for qualified independent inspector. What?
I think what we're looking for is a state
Reviewer, I mean, or reviewing
So
entity.
the best developer shall provide a certificate of compliance prepared by an independent qualified third party, verifying that the proposed system complies with requirements of this code.
A lot of reviews.
We could just say from a qualified independent third party.
But then we.
Do we feel like we need to add the like prior to? When does this certificate of compliance have to be submitted? How, you know, like, is this, they've got to have a compliant, because there's like, there's the design. It's like, do you have to have a certificate that the design is compliant and then the install, or is it they provide a certificate at the point of installation, at which they would have had to get the permit before they install?
Yeah, I think
Like-
we need to have an
Yeah.
submission.
Yeah, but actually, it's in all of them.
Right.
You will have a project manager who is the certified licensed engineer slash electrician from start to finish, because all different phases have to be checked off as they go to the next phase.
Is it good enough to say the best developer shall provide a certificate of compliance from a qualified independent third party? Or do we need to say a third?
I think that's, if we can get too wordy and
Yeah,
Yeah,
confuses. I like,
a qualified third party,
Qualified third party.
independent. Those are the qualifiers of the
Yeah.
third party.
yeah, I think, yeah. Try not to
Okay.
get too wordy.
Yeah, I think we got that then. I've got that wording
Okay.
here. Keep using ChatGPT, but just.
Quick question. The county has issued that you can't use Chat GPT without referencing.
No, AI, any AI would have to be referenced.
Like
If
if
we
you
use the
go-
wording specifically given by AI, we have to acknowledge that that's its source or that.
Is there even an industry standard for that?
citing.
Because I can just go in and copy it and say, make this sound more human, and it completely reworks.
I know, I don't know.
It's just-
I just know we got
with
some
the
rules
policy.
about using AI.
Policy also says we're not allowed to use.
Yeah, we can only use Gemini.
That's just an internal county policy. Yeah. This is a county policy, but I don't know that makes it so we can't use some verbiage here, you know, we just,
I think it gives us ideas.
yeah, it
Yeah.
does, it gives us good ideas, I like
Well-
them. All right. I think we can go on.
Okay, next section is setbacks and site requirements. Setbacks, the outermost edge of any BES enclosure shall be set back at least, section A, 100 feet from non-participating landowner property lines. Section B, 1,000 feet from any public and parklands unless waived by the respective management agency. Section C, 1,500 feet from the property line of any property that is zoned A5, A2.5, or Res 1, or that has a residential tax assessment indicating residential use of the property. Section D, 100 feet from the edge of the county and state right-of-ways unless waived by the managing agency. Section E, demonstrable distance to mitigate results identified in the plume model required in this land use code. Hazard mitigation analysis, which model dispersion events determined to necessitate evacuation of occupied structure shall be the basis for denial of a conditional use permit application.
Okay, that last part there is different than the version you have, that point E.
Yeah, I mean, most of point E is different.
Yeah. So
But
what do we have here from our commenters? On setbacks, the attorney made the following comments in subparagraph A. He asked the question, what is a non-participating landowner?
We could just add that to the definitions, can't we?
I don't know.
but what
I
is
think
a
it-
participant? What is a non-participating?
I think the intent was when they said non-participant means is, because what could happen is the company putting it in could buy several parcels.
Sure.
And so if they're the parcel of the parcel, that's a separate delineation. That doesn't count towards what we're talking about because they own that. And so if you're a participating party, you're the developer.
That's how I would understand that, just intuitively, but I mean, does it need further defining?
I feel like it's pretty clear.
I think it's pretty clear too, you know, if I'm a
Mhm.
partic, I'm the owner, I'm applying for the best facility. my neighboring property is mine also, that it's a, you know, it's a participating landowner property. But if
Yeah.
it's not owned by me, it's a non-participating.
Okay.
So that's good. The next thing he asked was in subparagraph C, does this conflict with non-participating landowner provision? So, you know, it reads 1,500 feet from property line of any property that is zoned A5, A2.5, or Res 1. Well, that would, if they own that adjacent property, would zone one of those. Does that make sense?
So if the residential property that this setback would take effect is also owned by the district.
By the participant, by the applicant.
No, it doesn't box them in if they bought all that land. Regardless of the zone, they're becoming,
Would it be a bad idea though, like if they're buying a, you know, A10 and a Res 1 and they're right next to each other, like maybe there needs to be a rezone or a boundary adjustment to join these properties before this application is done. Because if it stays Res 1, and then they later on decide like, okay, well, none of my infrastructure for this best is on here, we're gonna sell that.
Then you like,
Well, then you could let these subparagraphs stand as they are, and then they would have to get a rezone. To get it out of that problem.
although reason would be burdened because it would lock them into a specific area. And then at the reclamation stage, if they chose to subdivide pieces off for sale after reclamation is complete, they could just rezone it again. But I think I think there is value in making that section that they buy for this project be rezoned commercial.
So if they buy multiple plots, one of which being a Res 1, they can either comply with the setback, rezone. I think that makes sense.
Or
Rezone would come to you guys for approval.
that clause, or that has a residential tax assessment indicating residential use of the property, comes right out of the same language you use for defining a residential use for animal feeding operations. So I'm right in the middle of that, and you guys are gonna hear a case about that second PC meeting of the month of March.
Study up, gentlemen.
Yeah, so, that's the way it's defined, you know, I think the idea is that if the next adjacent parcel is tax assessed residential, it means there's a residence on it, right? And so they want you to be the setbacks from the property lines, not from the house, but from the property line of that property, tax assessed residential.
And you can still have a house on it, so.
Yeah, but then it has a residential annotation in the tax assessor's description.
okay, I remember we talked about this last time. Should we look at the notes from other folks before we get too far into it? Cause I know
Yeah.
SEI's proposal is basically like get rid of all of this
Yeah.
and make setbacks based on
That's right.
the actual technology and,
Right.
you know,
The attorney's
Details.
last,
project.
thing was that point E. Where we got all this stuff about the plume model. And he's basically, is this in conflict with the other setback requirements listed in subparagraphs A through D? Because if the plume model is more restrictive in the setback requirements, and then you got these setbacks that are saying you're only gonna be so many feet from, you know, the property lines. And
Or
then-
if the blue model's like, great, it's safe if it's 50 feet away, why are we making it be 1,500 feet away?
Right,
There was another
Right.
municipality that had really neat language about that. And I don't recommend we go this way, but it was somewhere in Kentucky, I think. They said all setbacks are 5,000 feet unless proved otherwise through plume modeling and hazard mitigation analysis, we will reduce the setbacks based on your study. That's pretty short, sweet and clean, but it's also very definitive. It is based on what are you putting in? What can you guarantee is safe? we'll adjust our setbacks based on your proven methodology.
So when we were dealing with the, whatever the technical name for the, medical.
Natural
Oh,
limits.
no.
Naturalist, thank you. So one of the requirements of the state with that was that the county's code of that could not be so restrictive. So like in that case, like a mile setback, like, well, okay, there's nowhere that you can put this.
But
Congratulations.
that's why the caveat is, you come in with your application saying, this is how much area it is based on our hazard mitigation analysis and plume modeling. And then the setbacks will be adjusted based on the information provided that's fact from
Yeah.
the actual developer.
Yeah, but Todd, I mean, that was a state requirement for natural medicine businesses, that you couldn't be so restrictive that there was no place that they were allowed.
Is there any such requirement in the state? Or
I don't
Not-
know.
No,
I don't know.
because that's how all these places are doing. When I went through, I think 18 or 20 other municipalities and going into specifically into those setbacks, all of them were all over the board. But a few of them became consistent because truthfully, without a hazard mitigation analysis and a plume model, these are spitballs.
So why don't we
You know,
go to that and say your setback is based on your hazard mitigation study and blue model analysis?
I mean, that's essentially what SEI says, that they think it should be setbacks shall be determined using technology and installation specific hazard evaluation consistent with the NFPA
Yeah, I-
8.5.
That's a lot simpler and a
Yeah.
lot more elegant than all of these other.
I don't like these 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, I think, and I think that's what the experts, this alluvial and SEI both were saying, that's
Yeah.
foolish.
Yeah.
They said if there is a fire, you just gotta, it's not gonna be anything very big, you gotta just watch surrounding brush. But 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, I think we gotta get rid of all that, and just go with
Well-
something like SEI says.
Yeah, if you go with that, it says using a technology and installation specific hazard evaluation.
Right.
Mhm.
So that kind of covers it.
I think
right?
so
It's like,
too.
we're gonna get a plume model and it's gonna say, and that's really elegantly simple, right?
But also then we don't have to defend our pulled out of the atmosphere 100 feet. Where'd you get that from?
And the contradictions that the attorney keeps.
Right.
pointing To and all that.
I agree, I think we,
Two on SEI's. Care for that indoor versus outdoor installation.
There's no indoor allowed anymore. With the new, I think the new NFPA standard coming out, for the new best reg, they discovered indoor installations are just like time bombs. What happened is the explosion in like Monterey and that kind of thing, some of those were enclosed, so it captured the gas in the enclosure. Cause it couldn't vent away and create a backdraft. An explosion that wouldn't have taken place if it hadn't been confined. And I think the new NFPA, I haven't read it yet. I think they were going away from, and utilities shall not be enclosed for utility scale. I'm not positive, I perused it, it's a big book. But I know that that was one of the failures of the Monterey Moss Landing project. That's the ongoing lawsuits and stuff with California.
But wouldn't, if we go with point A. That it's determined using the technology and installation specific hazard evaluation, right?
We don't need.
Why do we need
them.
point B at all?
I don't think we do.
No. I mean,
Yeah, I
I guess
don't
we
know we
could
do.
confirm that those things are basically considered by the NFPA 855, but
Right.
it seems like.
yeah, if they're in there, then why add the other language?
What about point C about worst case dispersion modeling may inform emergency planning, but shall not by itself establish zones for minimum setback distance?
Well, I guess
That's
I
kind of
don't
in
understand what
contradiction.
they mean by point A then. Technology and installation specific hazard evaluation. Isn't that a worst case dispersion modeling? I would think that those are the same thing.
I would too.
If it's not, then.
Because there is one thing I didn't agree with the battery standards representative. He used the words, no unit ever catches another unit. It's only just a section that ever burned. Those are definitive statements that we've heard them before.
But does.
The worst case scenario is it one container that he says that's good enough for worst case? So now you've got that whole, cause he says it's impossible, but we don't know, they're brand new. But
This
we
is-
know it's possible.
This is honestly, after our whole first draft that we went through and had 3 revisions of, and then we did 2 work sections on, it came down to this flipping question right here. That I don't know, what is the NFPA technology and installation specific hazard evaluation? If it's not a worst case modeling according to the battery technology.
And it's also, I think NFPA states worst case scenario.
I thought that consultant though, he was saying that NFPA, worst case scenario, according to that technology that he was showing us a slideshow of, would only account for if one cell. I remember I asked this question, if one cell caught on, in this module caught on fire, that he's saying that it's built to standards to not spread to the next cell, to the next cell, to the next cell. And so a worst case scenario modeling would only be one cell catching on fire.
So then build it to the standards where the first cell doesn't catch on fire,
And that's if all your systems are operating properly.
right?
Well,
Build it standards, they
the,
come out on fire.
Hey, Model Ts are the greatest car ever created.
so I guess there's still a blank spot and I have ignorance about well, what the heck is a worst case scenario?
So say that question again, what specifically?
What is a worst case scenario? Well, I can't say the question well.
You said it again before. and I
No,
didn't catch
the
it.
problem is that the worst case scenarios are modeled according to the battery technology used and the installation the specific installation of that battery chemistry and technology and the module design that it's setting in. And so Everett's raising a contention that I don't believe your cell fire doesn't pass from the other one cell to another, right? Whereas NFPA may defend that's a safe assumption.
All right, I'm gonna give you the chat GPT answer.
Do you
So-
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. According to this, it says, I asked for what is the definition of worst case scenario for a best standards based on NFPA 855. It says the worst case scenario is defined as a fully involved propagating thermal runaway event where all batteries in an enclosure are burning simultaneously, causing maximum pressure, toxic gas release, and structural damage without immediate suppression. And that's saying that's what's in the 855. And I think that is, because I've read the worst case scenario for the last edition, and they aren't saying it's one container. They're not going with that. But I haven't read the new one.
It could be that the standards in the new one kind of, assume, or that the other design standards essentially mitigate the risk of
Multiple cells.
one, unit by unit.
That's what that
Gotcha.
guy was
Yeah.
arguing. He was saying they're innovating the design of these
Mhm.
modules so that they don't spread cell to cell. First of all, they're preventing the ignition event in the first place by monitoring, their charge rate or whatever the heck it was, so as to catch it before it ignites. Secondly, they're venting it so that it doesn't explode. Thirdly, they're redesigning the modules so that they don't spread from one cell to another within the module. But, yeah, you see, you're shaking your head Everett, yeah, I don't buy that.
So,
Yeah, talk to me about engineers and cars. Who works on them versus who designed them?
So NFPA 855 requires a hazard mitigation analysis. The hazard mitigation analysis evaluates installation configuration versus tested configuration, fire and gas hazards identified during UL 9548 testing, building geometry and ventilation conditions, separation distances and fire barriers. That tells me right there, they're not assuming that this one cell is just gonna be contained.
That's what they're designing them with, is separation and barriers now. So,
Fire suppression effectiveness. Emergency response considerations.
Well, that's great. If we just said, did we go with point A, then it sounds to me like it does it,
I think
right?
it does.
Yeah.
Either that or I'm looking at alluvials. They just do the minimum 100 feet from a and 100 feet from the edge of the right of way, and then the section C. It doesn't specifically reference NFPA, but you could say at the end, instead of these standards, NFPA 855.
Yeah, they're saying to the minimum distance of acute exposure guideline level 1 as specified by the US Environmental Protection
Yeah, that's
Agency.
Which is an 855.
Okay, so
Seems
that's,
like they kind of conveniently moved around that.
okay, so then I don't know what that means, but,
Just my rendition.
right.
I think SEI A,
Mhm.
all of determinations shall consider this.
It's fact-based versus guesswork. On a national standard.
But that's for
Do we
you,
wanna,
utility scale best. Is
Yeah.
there a different standard for resident?
residential essentially is, you know, they'll, you know, living standards based
Hey, even if it's safe, we won't have
Yeah.
to step back.
electrician or
And that's something we have to discuss. Because that would be, because it is a conditional use permit, they can take into the site design and add that condition upon the site design outside of the safety bar just for the aesthetics.
Do we want to look at, or how does this interact with the rest of the code in terms of basic setbacks for other things? And, you know, if a hazard mitigation analysis of this says it can be 5 feet away from another structure, not that it will, but, you know, is that gonna give an applicant cause to say, well, I don't have to follow any of the code setbacks, you know, or like, should we just say follow, you know, follows?
Require 15 feet from property lines to feed chickens, folks. That's
Well,
land use code.
to play devil's advocate, confined feeding operations involve potentially more, you know, ground, you know, animal waste on the ground. They involve noise and smell and probably more traffic. So I don't think that's a fair comparison to make.
I'll take all that over chemical poisoning.
Absolutely.
And a toxic fluid that melts your
Sure.
skin.
But we don't know. I mean, I guess what we're saying is like, wait till the hazard mitigation analysis confirms that it needs to be 1,500 feet or 5 feet. And like, who are we to know otherwise?
I guess my assumption is that even for the smallest of systems, a hazard mitigation analysis is going to require more than 100 feet. Maybe not.
In some instances,
Yeah.
but then it goes back to, again, we also, Lance brought up a very important part. You guys will have to also look at the site design. So we're going off of, this is what you're required to be safe. Now let's talk about the aesthetic setback.
So do we have to detail like those standards for the site design here as well?
And that could, because it's a conditional use, it's gonna come to the planning commission, just like when we have someone say, hey, we want some screening or whatever, you can kind of, when it comes to you guys for consideration, that's where that input comes into the site appearance and site aesthetics while having already a set standard for the safety.
It seems like that's where we get the negative feedback from the applicant. That we're- Yeah, if they're coming in and then we're changing a bunch of stuff, whereas if we said something up front.
Or it's not universal.
Yeah,
It-
correct.
It ends up, yeah.
So that's why we probably do need to talk about setbacks and generalization as well as the hazard mitigation including one.
So if we do minimum 100 feet or setback for utility scale best, as determined using technological rules and specific hazard evaluation system within the PA 55, separation distance principles, or whichever agreement. 100 feet or that, or whichever.
And that 100 feet is what is enclosed in that hazard mitigation, so the edge of the hazard mitigation area plus 100 feet.
Can't do this, we can't do this stuff at the end of the day, man. Don't know what to do with that. I like A on SEI, for sure. I just don't know if that fully accounts for everything and in case bringing up the setbacks, other setbacks in the land use code, right?
Mhm.
So just to make sure I can understand your point, Kate.
Well,
You're
you know, I guess I don't know the land use code well enough to know if there's a general setbacks established for
structures.
for structures.
Chapter 3,
Yeah.
25 feet from.
25 feet from internal property lines,
Internal
on a
property line.
structure, 5 feet for a non-habitable structure.
50 feet from waterways, like.
Mhm.
open
And
water.
also you just add into the clause, also has to meet all the setbacks in this code. And that,
Well, that's what I'm wondering if we should say
Well, you-
it has to meet a minimum of that chapter 3 setbacks.
on top of your hazard mitigation and all.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because then we're using our bulk standards that already exist.
That's what I want. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wondering is if like, okay, everyone else, if you build a freaking hay shed, you have to follow some setbacks, but if the plume model shows that you can be 3 feet away from the fence line, yeah,
You can just do that simple addition and follow the bulk standard setbacks in this code. Because they're already established.
okay. Let's go with that for now and go on to other sections, because this is the fundamental, most challenging section. And we can beat it up. I think we all like the simplified point A of SEI. Reference the other setbacks already in the code in chapter 3 as minimum requirements, right?
yeah.
So I can wordsmith that and come back in the next time around with the setback things. Plus take a little deeper dive, look at NFPA 855 with these technology and installation specific hazard evaluation, right? What does that sound like? Cause I feel like we get really bogged down in here, but this
Yeah.
is like the hardest part. to
You
figure
know,
out.
it'd be really, I have a really hard time wrapping my mind around like, what is this hazard mitigation analysis? What does that look like? What does it say? Are we gonna be able to interpret that if it comes in front of us? If SEI or Alluvial had like an example from another project that we could look at, like what's the information that we would be presented with? What is like a rank, kind of an average project? What would this, obviously it's site specific, but kind of like, is there an example we could look at to see?
You can
What that
actually
look
look at
like.
it and imagine, because I've pulled them up and looked at it, I have the same question, what does it
Yeah.
look like? Is it something that you can absorb as a general labor?
Yeah.
And I can tell you, basically, he did put one up on the screen when he was going through it, and Daryl's aware, hazard spills, hazardous waste, how we set up perimeters and reach, so it's, imagine an aerial photograph that looks like a cloud that has different
Right.
shapes, and then it's gonna have different colors indicating
Sure.
different zones. And it will cover it'll have how many
Yeah.
feet, how far out, the toxicity level in each section until it reaches that acceptable range of,
I guess, yeah, I'd be interested in looking at one of those and seeing like, okay, if we apply the standards that we're saying are our standards, and we had an application with this hazard mitigation analysis in front of us, what would we say? What, how would the standards apply?
Won't we have their expert is gonna have to certify that we're
Yeah.
compliant, so we
Sure.
don't need to interpret it. If the guy says it'll fit here, then we're done.
We also have the hazard mitigation analysis and plume modeling section of this.
I mean, that's-
draft, right? that specify model standards and worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario gives some of that definition of what's gonna be in the hazard analysis. And
I
then,
guess like what I mean is, will that hazard analysis say, bottom line, it has to be this far away from a residential structure? Or is it gonna say like, hey, here's a map, here's where it's kind of toxic and here's where it's most toxic? And are we gonna have to interpret that and be like, well, we decide that it's okay, you know, like it's really hard for me to wrap my head around.
Sounds like geo.
I mean, that's what I'm asking. Do you have an
On
example?
the internet.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's not.
yeah.
Okay,
So
Very, very easy to understand.
I mean, this is why alluvial in their comment kind of brought in this point C of to the minimum distance for acute, so the setback at least to the minimum distance for acute exposure guideline level 1 as specified in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
Right.
That's referenced over in our plume hazard mitigation analysis and plume modeling section, right? Where like we're saying model has to also include the distance of dispersion with concentration levels referencing the EPA acute exposure level guidelines. So I do think that somewhere like the setback requirements got to cross-reference this enough to say,
So that's why.
we want to see where the boundaries of that acute level.
Right, I guess that's kind of part of my question is like, what, you know, without knowing what this analysis looks like, is it, do we still need to decide at like what level of analysis or what level of exposure is okay, or like what
And
they're, what
That's what the
is, yeah.
EPA reference does, it says their exposure levels of
Yeah.
toxins, you know, and it's saying this exposure level is safe, this exposure
Mhm.
level's not, and where's the boundary between it's safe and not safe? And then that's the area that I think we need to reference in our setback and say, and that's what alluvial's suggestion is that the setbacks go to that
Mhm.
boundary area.
That makes sense to me to get a little bit more clarity on. Or yeah, I guess I need to see an example of the actual.
Sure. Why don't I prepare that for the next time around, okay? I think it is the critical thing. I think that the plume model, the hazard analysis shows you where the boundaries are of like safe toxin levels and unsafe toxin levels. And that's what we're alluvial's proposing in their point C is that the setbacks go
To the minimum of that, yeah.
right. You go into kind of unsafe levels of toxins according to the hazard analysis. The plume model analysis, that's how I'm understanding it. That's where the setbacks.
Because you want it not to encroach upon another, think of it as like if you're shooting, you can't leave your property line with the bullet. So basically, once it becomes safe,
Mhm.
that's the idea.
Sure.
We're just trying to keep that toxicity and danger level confined to their parcel.
So what if it was something like, you know, setbacks shall be determined or such that the HMA demonstrates that thermal fire and gas impacts do not extend beyond the property boundary. So based on the HMA, the thermal fire and gas impacts will go this far. That's your setback.
Is to
That's
your
the
point,
same thing
they
where
can't go beyond your property boundaries.
that's the idea of the plume model. If it doesn't fit in a parcel, it can't be put there.
I guess that's the question I have. It's not clear to me in the words that we have that that's the boundary. It's saying you have to have this plume model, we have to have this analysis, but there's no clear definition of what threshold that setback.
so that would be what
Yeah.
we saying for C, that would address that.
Yeah,
So-
I agree. I think,
So if you're an
yeah.
applicant, then you have to do a plume model of the parcel
Mhm.
you're considering to put your facility on. And if your plume model, if the unsafe toxic
Mhm.
levels exceed around the boundaries of your parcel, it's a no-go.
Well.
Well, that's what we indicate in that, and that's, it creates, so that's one of the words for
I mean, but it
evacuation.
is it a no?
Because if you
Yeah,
have to
I-
evacuate a residential neighborhood or a residential home, you've exceeded your boundary with your project.
But what if it
But-
goes beyond into undeveloped?
A vacant
It's a,
35 property.
it's not irrigated,
Yeah.
it's,
Right,
But again, we're still talking soil contamination.
or it's BLM land is, I don't, you know.
Oh, the land has its own setback.
Yeah.
Can't get within a certain space, that's.
So what do we have in the land use code that deals with other hazardous material sites?
We don't
Okay.
have a lot.
Right, so we're trying to, I mean, if somebody's got a big,
Because we don't even have a lot of LEPC references. That's what the LEPC is supposed to be for, is when we have a project come into us that has hazardous materials and possible containment of, and this is what Chris could definitely speak to, it's supposed to be referred to the LEPC to give a report to then provide to the planning commission saying, these are the hazards that we perceive, and as the preparedness agency, we recommend the following. Because,
His point is if you don't have setbacks
yeah,
in the land use code, the LEPC and nobody else can define those. If somebody wants to bring in an anhydrous ammonia plant,
right, that's,
you gotta have a setback and you don't wanna establish a setback after they turn in an application. Similar to this.
because that's why these are all conditional, because if this comes up in the conditional use process, that is a condition that can be added by this county.
But at that point, you need to have some language in there that it's not just focus on best, that if there's other hazardous.
Yeah.
Are you gonna require a plume model if somebody wants to build an anhydrous plant?
that's
I
my,
would.
that's my question. Well, that's what,
After seeing that, you bet I would.
but we don't require that right.
We don't really have an addressing part of the land use code for that.
My concern is, and I also would like this to be as simple and straightforward as possible. This is the one area, I just don't know who to call. There's just so many variables. And I don't know how to even encompass everything in short and concise. I just don't.
I know. I mean, all the other parts, you know, your decommissioning plan, your financial surety, all that stuff. I mean, that's just, you know, common, normal stuff, and emergency response and cost recovery. I'm not too worried about all that stuff.
Yeah, we've hit the
That's like,
hazard mitigation.
where can
section
this thing
really well.
go and where can it not go?
So is that addressed in the EPA, the acute exposure guideline level, does that?
Well, what that
that's
was gonna
standard
tell
that-
you is it's just in the model, it's gonna say, again, this is where it's, you know, the toxins are too, you know,
Right,
acute, and here's where they're safe and here's where they're not safe, kind of a boundary area according to a model. But then what do we want to say about that? Is that boundary area is gonna be all within your parcel? Or that boundary area can't touch the closest adjacent house? Or that boundary area can't move across any boundary line where the adjacent parcel is tax assessed residential? Like,
And a vacant lot can turn into a residential lot with a simple addition of a house.
yeah,
No vacant lot stays vacant forever.
Right, and that's the thing,
Yeah.
it may be a.
That's why it
now,
has
but
to
you're
stay in that parcel.
Potentially destroying the property value. of
it's,
it.
it's right, you're
Mhm.
destroying the
You
property.
just
value. I
can't,
can't.
you just can't say because there's no one else around that we don't care. It has to be mitigated to maintain it in their specific area so that they don't ruin someone else's property or cause damage to another property. They have to contain it in their property bounds.
I mean, I could see that being extremely limiting though, like
Right.
where it would virtually eliminate all parcels from.
from having, so Chris, do we have any industrial hazardous material businesses or anything in here that the LEPC's looked at that say that, I mean, is there any history here in the county that helps with this or not?
I don't know how far back, there used to be a lot more, like in the 90s, there was a lot.
Yeah.
There's one that got shut down by the EPA up on 348 that was an ag services. Anhydrous, info, ammonium nitrate stuff. I don't think we have anything major right now. CropWorks has stuff. Doesn't mean that somebody won't wanna come in.
So this might be useful, so AEGL one or the no, where is it? The acute exposure guideline number one. So is the airborne concentration, it's the level at which the airborne concentration of the substance is above a level at which it is predicted that the general population could experience notable discomfort, irritation, or certain asymptomatic non-sensory effects. These effects are transient and reversible and do not have the ability to escape. How is AEGL1 used in hazard analysis, including BESS? AEGL1 is typically used to define the outermost planning boundary in dispersion modeling. Marks where the public might notice the release, does not justify evacuation or shelter in place orders, often used for notification zones rather than excluding zones, help distinguish between community impact versus life safety impact.
What are those AGI? What?
AEGL
dash.
That's what that section C, the EPA.
That's what alluvial talks about.
That's what the deal comes about. And then AEGL2 is closer where the threshold for serious or irreversible health effects or impaired ability to escape. 3 is the closest threshold for life-threatening or lethal effects.
I mean, I think their point C has some validity.
I did-
How do you think it-
Yeah,
But so the NFPA 855 doesn't cover that same setback language, because SEI says follow NFPA and alluvial says use this AEGL-1.
I think quite frankly, you should use both.
Okay, well, we could say both.
Yeah, but
Whichever
Dave's
is-
question is,
whichever is more-
NFPA 855 reference this?
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
I think 855, the plume modeling is described. But I think they reference the EPA because 855 is electrical and EPA is environmental health and safety.
Okay. So then we should look at putting them both in there.
Because if you combine the two, you're covering your bases.
I like the combination, if there's a way to elegantly do that, I can work on that, or we can work on it together here, but that sounds.
Because that was my only concern with section C, was they just conveniently left out the 855 part. If you had 855 and the level 1 AGEL, now you've covered both your bases
Right.
based on toxicity levels and damage to humans and property.
So I kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I just asked AI, oh my God, look at this. Does NFPA, 855 refer to AEGL? And it says short answer is no. NFPA 855, the standard for the installation of stationary, it does not directly reference or
Okay.
use AEGLs.
They're two separate regulatory authorities.
So I think bringing them together makes a lot of sense, and it covers things. And then later on, when we talk about our plume model hazard mitigation analysis section, in the worst case scenario, we may need to just tie these two parts together here, setbacks and that.
I thought it was strange that they didn't add that to their statement.
The NFPA 855 is kind of the basis for approval for this. We can then use AEGL1 as the criteria for setback.
Well, it should be additional, yes.
Because it doesn't mean we're gonna require setbacks based on AEGL1, but not NFPA 855, because NFPA 855 covers everything.
Yeah, and you don't want to fault for that. They're two separate regulatory agencies.
So I think we could do AEGL1 just specifically to setbacks and not have to worry about whether it covers everything that NFPA does, because we've already covered that this project has to be.
right. Like we might not even need to reference A55 because we're already saying you have to comply with everything in A55. I think,
to go with like point C of alluvial rather than point A of SEI, and we really have covered it better. So,
Yeah, from what I read, I think so.
Is there any harm to combining the two in the reference?
Unless they're inconsistent somehow.
Well, then you have that clause of whichever is
More restrictive.
I just, again, because we're not experts in 855, we're not experts in this other one. Again, going on that basic layman terms, we know that these two regulatory things together will cover what we would miss for our lack of knowledge. And it doesn't hurt to list it.
let me work on that, okay? Cause I think that that's complicated and it's hard to figure out right here, but let me work on those two suggestions. I think both SEI's 8.A and alluvial's point C are really valid. But we need to figure out if they're redundant or one's not necessary if you adopt the other. And I can work on that for the next go around. Does that sound good enough? And then I also got a note about the follow the bulk setback standards of chapter 3. I think if I work on those three things that we could get the setbacks where we might like it. Does that sound good?
Mhm.
Now,
You're gonna hate.
okay, one last thing. Yeah, I'm gonna hate myself tomorrow for saying this tonight. Is that what you just said? Yeah, that was a dumb idea. Why did I take that on? Well, the acute exposure guideline levels, though, that's talking about the exposure of humans to these toxic levels. That's not referring to property being exposed to that. This is just so. You know, the setbacks will be from like houses and occupied structures in that, with that application. And I don't know that addresses, do we want to, does that inform us on the setbacks from other people's property that may be vacant or their house may be on the far end of that property, you know?
so I think something that one of the folks from SEI mentioned that is like worth considering, and I know we're all concerned about this, it's, you know, emerging technology, it feels scary. It's full of chemicals that could harm us. As one person mentioned, you know, the auto shop next door could blow up and we have no regulations about the plume from that ruining a property next door.
That's right. Or a burning mobile home.
Or a burning mobile home is more toxic than one of these, you know, so I think we have to be careful if we want to, you know, be hospitable to this sort of energy development in the county, that we're not restricting, you know, it seems like what we do is we like have a new scenario in front of us and we like write all these regulations. And then it's like, well, to your point, there's no other regulations about any other hazardous like industry in the county, or like, you know, to what extent can we prevent any hazardous material from going onto someone else's property?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a balance there.
Yeah.
And, you know, potentially there's, you know, mitigation or insurance or whatever that would cover, you know, damage to your neighbor's property if this happens, versus trying to regulate the occurrence out like completely.
So let's say we conceded that, but we don't want to risk humans. Or
Yes, and I would agree. I don't think we want to say, well, the mobile home next door could blow up, so we're gonna let these blow up, and you know, sorry if you breathe in the toxic plume.
No occupied structures.
Yeah, I that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
An occupied structure could move. What if the neighbor then decides to add on?
And you limit, you know, the development potential of a neighboring
You're
property.
encroaching on any neighbor's property ability to develop and play
Right.
housing.
Right.
And you devalue the property to a level that makes it almost incorrigible.
Yeah.
But what going back to the confined animal operation, that setback is from the property, that setback is from the property.
Property line of a
Yeah.
property tax assessed residential.
1,500 feet.
But if it's not tax assessed residential right now.
Right,
and
so
it
in that
that's either
circumstance,
vacant or being used for
someone
agriculture.
in the future, but in purchasing that piece of land, they are purchasing with the knowledge that there's essentially this risk next door.
Well, that's the
But-
large animal feeding operation,
Mhm.
1,500 feet,
But
is because it then
Right.
doesn't restrict the other properties.
it already has a residence on it.
Right,
But the thing is that Dave's feeling uncomfortable about is that it curbs the development potential
sure, yeah.
of a vacant or agricultural property that doesn't have a residence on it right now.
But we're doing that all the time with allowing development of commercial and
Yeah,
industrial things next to other, the development is going to happen next to other people's property and presumably you're buying, sure, it could be non-residential now, but you have plans in 10 years to develop and you already own the land. There's like kind of two scenarios. It's like you already own the land, you don't have a house on it yet, but you bought it under the assumption that there wasn't gonna be a best facility next to you. But, largely it's like, okay, that property might sell and later they're going to want to do something with it. Well, they're gonna sell it with the knowledge that there's a facility next to it and that may impact the way they want to develop things.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And one of the other things I'm gonna bring up, which probably not popular, again, the purpose is if it doesn't exceed the property lines, it doesn't affect anyone's property. Also, just because we've allowed it now, are we not feeling the unintended consequences of not doing our due diligence to not devalue others' property? Because we deal with that every day. So should we create another code based on our past mistakes?
But should we not allow subdivisions? Because every person that comes in here that is opposed to a subdivision going next door to them is saying they're devaluing my property because they're building this thing next to us.
Then what do we assess? Road assessment, is it safe? Can it be done safely? Does it-
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're kind of not in the business of determining whether a development is appropriate based on someone else's property
Right, but
value.
it's different when it actually extends past that property line
Yeah.
with a hazard.
And
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, cause like when we had the meetings on the wedding event.
Yeah,
You're devaluing my property, I didn't
We hear it all
want
the
this
time.
next to me, like. It's just, this is different, right?
well, that's a bit of a subjective,
Yeah.
opinion of the evaluation. It may or may not, it may have increased value. in
Right.
some way.
They may never be a fire.
But if there's a hazardous event, they dump toxins on there, or they
Yeah,
have the threat of that,
totally.
that definitely has
Yeah.
has some objective devaluing potential, for sure.
I mean, I guess, yeah, we're,
But yeah, I'm struggling with you on this, I think too, I think that that's a valid point. And the reality is that I think it's gonna be really hard for a hazard mitigation analysis to stay within the confines of the property
That's-
lines in any case.
I'm
Like,
agreeing
you
with
got
that
like
too.
500 acres in the middle of it.
The guy with alluvial kind of indicated otherwise. He indicated that the hazard mitigation analyses of these new systems are actually fairly safe. And
And now
Yeah.
every major manufacturer is stopping EV production because they don't sell.
Because the manufacturer says it's safe, and that, call me just skeptical. But when a manufacturer says it's safe, everything that gets produced, they said it was safe. And we don't know, especially on new technology. Sure, they burned one in their yard with all the systems operating perfectly.
I'm skeptical of all those systems, especially when they're dependent on computer analysis and tied to the grid of someone monitoring whatnot. Not saying at all that I don't think we should be skeptical.
Well,
But-
I think we've narrowed it down to two things, and I'll just write down that, setbacks need to, in terms of the safety of the toxic levels need to be considered in terms of like occupied structures and human safety.
Mhm.
But then there's also the second consideration of whether or not we need to consider impacts to the development potential of neighboring properties.
Mhm.
And those are kind of two different things to me. One is,
So one thought I have on this, are we distinguishing between residential and non-residential?
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
What's the KWH limit? Or is that, is it?
We had.
yeah, oh, I forget now. I think it was, it's in the beginning.
I
here.
can't remember.
It's in the-
Jake has some
definition.
guidelines based on what DMEA is.
So one of the things I saw when I was researching this is that for residential systems, flume modeling and HWAs, whatever the acronym is not prescriptive, they're not standard for small systems.
Right, so we're only talking about
Yeah.
utility scale,
Yeah.
basically.
So back to that point, well,
Yeah.
what if it goes past the property that they currently own? And well, this is common all the time, if you're developing something that has a certain impact to the area, start talking to your neighbors and buying up property. Like if you wanna put, like, as we discussed, like these systems aren't cheap, we're not talking about like some guy that's got $100,000 in his checking account. These systems, and we're in serious money. And if you're gonna put that here, you need to acquire the amount of property necessary to put this in the center of it, so that the plume model does not go outside the property of which you own.
And i.e. solar, the Garnet Mesa facility,
Yeah,
they worked for years buying properties around it. And the
Yeah.
intent
exactly.
to put when they acquired those properties over a period of almost a year. To buy enough
Hundreds
property
of millions of dollars.
to fit it on there.
It's just part of the deal.
All right. Dave suggested we move on. I think we should maybe move on because we can do some else and it's, we'll go to just 10 minutes, I guess, that good,
Sound good?
yeah. Fired him ready to go. All right, where are we at then? 1.2 FEMA floodplain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, point two, FEMA floodplain, sorry. FEMA floodplain, no component of a battery energy storage system shall be located within the mapped area of a 500-year floodplain as mapped and delineated by FEMA. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I took out this 50-foot setback must be maintained during construction. That's redundant. There's already a 50-foot setback. Yeah, and I think we talked about that last night.
Section 3, irrigated farmland. That facility shall not be located on irrigated farmland, prime agricultural farmland, or farmland of statewide importance as defined in the National Resources Conservation Services. When a project is proposed to be located on agricultural designated lands, the project application shall include an agricultural management plan that adequately demonstrates continuation of agricultural operations given the site conditions. Best facilities should be designed to minimize loss of irrigated ground and shall maintain irrigation of surrounding properties, including accesses and right of way. Isn't that already contradicting itself?
Yep, that's what the attorney said.
Yeah.
It's not, or it is.
It is.
Yeah,
attorney
I'm
said-
saying to say, don't do it, but if you do, let's just keep some farmland going.
Yeah, he asked, is there a conflict between facilities not be located on irrigated farmland and facilities should be designed to minimize loss?
Not allowed, but
If you do.
in the event you do.
Alluvial has an interesting concept.
On ag land.
Mhm.
Alluvial's concept, you wanna read that?
Well, it just says, if a best facility is proposed to be located on irrigated farmland, prime agricultural farmland, or farmland of statewide importance as defined by the NRCS, the applicant shall commit to maintain an area of farmland in the county that is equivalent to the portion of such farmland rendered unusable.
Oh, that's horrible.
How would they commit? Yeah, I don't know.
That's horrible.
Oh, you're gonna disturb this wetland, but if you go and preserve a wetland, 100 miles away.
We'll swap you. Yeah, that's horrible.
So you just say no, huh? It
Yeah,
can't be done?
I just say, if we're saying no, don't put it in prime ag land as identified, it's a no.
So I feel like a lot of that came from what went on with the solar farm.
Right.
Mhm.
They brought
Right,
in-
right, because it's on farmland.
Well, and it got turned down at first and then.
And then they create
Then
the
they have those
agricultural
sheep-
plan and the sheep.
But, but with that,
Sheep ever gonna be out there? Is there?
Lush green field.
And there's a field and then it's been fallow forever
Yeah.
and they don't irrigate it anymore. Is that still prime farmland? Cause somebody could pipe some water in there?
Yeah, so how are we designating?
How do you? Just go by the NRCS?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that
and,
makes it.
and there's not a lot of it really, in Delta County. No. I mean, a lot of people would call their land prime farmland, but you look on NRCS, it's like not,
Yeah.
and it's not that.
So then we just have one sentence there.
Yeah, I think it's
Stop. It won't be,
shall not be located on.
okay, just leave the rest around.
Yeah,
We're gonna preserve our agricultural heritage, like just, no.
well, especially a BESS facility, it's not like a solar array where you can try to attempt to keep farm land underneath it. I mean, at BESS facility, there ain't no farmland going on there. Cause we said there's no vegetation
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, you can't have vegetation.
Are there a lot of options though? The NRCS designation, I mean, there's a
I
lot.
don't think the NRCS really covered, I don't know how accurate that is, because it's a national basis.
Well, I
don't
know.
if it's truly.
I wonder if that's just,
What was your question?
I know
well,
they've got soil type mapping and I don't know if
Yeah.
that's what they base it on.
Yeah, it is.
Seemed like
It
it was
is.
when I looked at it.
And there's just not a lot of.
There's not a lot in this area.
But it says not on irrigated farmland or prime.
prime, I mean-
Or farmland, is it?
or
like-
farmland, yeah, I guess. It's gotta be irrigated, it's gotta be prime. It's gotta be-
Are you saying any part of the parcel is irrigated or just for the best? I think there's a distinction.
It's a facility,
Yeah, I think just for
Your word.
yeah,
cause you could have,
just like we ask people to build,
Alfalfa
their-
in an area that could get contaminated and you still make use of it.
Because the commissioners required them to have irrigated land under the solar fields.
Mhm.
So if you say it can't, if the best can't be on a parcel that's irrigated, then that's contradictory to what the commissioners have already approved for the solar land.
Are we
Because
gonna?
well, but that's the battery part of it.
It's still.
no, but they're gonna want, they're gonna,
Well,
they're
I
probably
mean,
gonna.
if they do it in a part not irrigated,
I'm just saying, be careful with your language there, because you could contradict what is already been put in place.
Cause I think for that agrivoltaic,
Because it's on the same legal
Parcel.
well, just.
Subdivided.
Or the facility, I mean, a parcel can have more, it can have
Yeah,
irrigated and non-irrigated parts. The
Right.
facility should be placed,
I think we can keep the first sentence and they can be on an unirrigated part of that
Mhm.
parcel.
Right.
Mhm.
cause we can see that a lot. No, that's prime ag land. Wow, you got a couple of sagebrush, you did good.
So keep the first sentence and wipe out the rest.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah. Very good.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna highlight it and I'm gonna backspace and it's all gone. How's that? How's that? Is that good? I like this editing. All right,
You're learning something.
okay. Next, design standards,
Yep. All right, section
interconnection.
Interconnection, utility BESS facilities must demonstrate interconnection rights or accessory use to energy facilities.
So I added in rights and I think it's a good addition.
Yeah.
Detailed electrical and design plans. The applicant shall provide detailed plot plans showing detailed electrical designs and demonstrating all the use standards are integrated with the design plans and individual module BESS.
Nobody had any comments and we like it as is.
Sure.
Okay.
Down to water storage, water.
Potential fire
Yeah,
space.
we can skip there. Nobody had anything really to add to that or change.
Okay,
And then water storage though, they did.
So water storage, as we have it here, it says best facilities must provide a water cistern or hydrant for firefighting at a minimum size of 20,000 gallons of water storage and be identified within site designs. Cisterns and hydrants must be accessible, used by local fire officials. The best operators shall be responsible for the full cost of all infrastructure improvements necessary to provide for adequate supply of water and fire suppression purposes. Completion and proof of such improvements shall be required prior to operation of the best regulated under the land use code.
So there's really kind of like two things going on here. There's a water cistern or hydrant requirement, right? And then there's just really another way of saying like, you know, the best operator shall be responsible for full cost of all infrastructure. Oh, I guess, no, they're different. Anyway, the attorney said maybe the water requirements should be broken out between hydrant and cistern. I would think that with a hydrant, we would be most concerned about flow rate, whereas with the cistern, we'd be concerned about number of gallons. Alluvial proposed striking this completely, and SCI had no comment.
I'm with that, striking it completely. You don't put water on electrical fire.
Right.
And what's the point in having 20,000 gallons of water? on it?
This was what one of our consultants that came
Yeah.
and advocated for as well. But what about the surrounding area for fire suppression because of the heat that comes from or anything that
Around it.
spreads?
So we don't start.
Or first consultants had said some of the initial data we had found was a recommendation from them to create a fog to keep the smoke plume down. That wasn't to try and put the fire out, it was to keep the contaminants, but then like they said at their presentation last time was that creates a problem when you're putting that in the runoff,
Right,
which is running onto the neighbor's property into streams, et cetera. So,
right.
Don't we have a section for stormwater management? Which then would cover the event that somebody has to come out and put water on the.
I think actually what we had was containment and how they were set, treat it like a gas tank. There's this catchment that has plumbing to initialize into a catchment area that can be cleaned up as hazardous spill on the site and designed by a qualified engineer.
Well, this is gonna be this difficult as setbacks, frankly, from what we have a lot of conflicting kind of subject matter expert advice here. I was talking to Kelson, he's a firefighter too, and he was just like, the practice is you let it burn and you don't do anything with
Yep.
it. And that's what these other guys said the last time they were here too. And then like to Chris's point, you douse that plume with water and you're just putting toxics into the water wherever the water goes. But we have the concession of maybe containing all that water, if that really works when you're out there firefighting with water.
The engineer from Alluvial also is basically like, I don't know how I would design one of these.
That's
He
right.
was basically like, I don't know how, I mean, it kind of goes down to the impermeable surface and the water catchment, but like, he was basically like, that's not really feasible. And doesn't really exist in their other kind of designs.
Right. So that there you go. I think we summarized all the conflicting kind of.
Why do they require in NFPA fire suppression systems in these containers?
Yeah. Oh,
And where does that water go in the case the outside is Pierce, which.
Well,
you can
fire-
put in one
Is
cell.
fire suppression necessarily water though?
Yeah.
It could be going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because you can't put them out. Yeah, that's good.
Because these, some of them have to thermally react with
Yeah.
water.
Right.
Or they say strike water.
Gas and stuff that often in another container or drive.
Yeah.
I would think the only reason to have water is to suppress any fire that ignites around the
Mhm.
facility,
Yeah.
vegetation,
Yeah.
Coming
Or-
to
Mm-hmm.
the.
or mitigating wildfire coming to the facility.
Mm,
cause it is one of the things when we went to the LWP conference, that is I do agree with them saying you are to just let it burn.
mhm,
That is a standard that has been
Yeah.
proven in several different locations.
mhm.
That is the prescribed method, just, you can't stop it. Just monitor it, contain it, that's been the mantra.
And dousing the plume seems precarious. It's just like,
Yeah.
Where do you do that? How do you do that? How do you not get it onto the container?
I think we just strike it.
You don't need any water on site for
Nope.
anything.
Flush the toilet.
Flush it.
I think you need to have, I think you need to have water on it,
Yeah.
both for the wildfire concern
And if
and
it's part of
it's
the area.
setting, and setting
And what if
the
we have
surrounding land on.
the residential systems where it's like, it can't be within 3 feet of a door opening? Like a generator, like what if our setbacks are gonna be that tight? So now we go and this best residential system is on fire and like, well, I guess we're gonna lose the whole house because we don't have any water to fight any.
Okay.
Well, this is,
But-
this isn't dealing with residential
No, this is,
This is just.
For
Utilities strictly,
yeah.
yeah.
So the question I had was, how did we arrive at 20,000
Yeah.
gallon? Where did that?
It's the old technology, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I don't.
Okay.
So
I
that,
mean, as long as there's still-
the new wording is a lot longer and more complex than what we have here in our older version, which is water infrastructure. The best operator shall be responsible for the full cost of all infrastructure improvements necessary to provide adequate water supply for fire suppression purposes. Completion and proof of such improvements shall be required prior to operation of a best regulated under the LUC.
Just go back to that, under water infrastructure, is that where you get that?
I mean, I don't know how who's gonna prove they have adequate, you know, what are
does that mean?
qualifications for adequate water supply, but
So I did look it up real quick with the IA thing, and I think it did come from the NFPA. It says it literally said 20,000 gallon. NSF 61 certified below ground HDPE cisterns are used for best units in Colorado to provide reliable on-site fire suppression and emergency cooling.
That's from NFPA.
Cause that's. I wish I brought my computer and had the NFPA on it.
So the reason that water is required on site for BESS, in the event emergency protocol responders are to de-energize the system if possible, and then apply large volumes of water for cooling and exposure protections to the rest of the system
Yeah.
Doesn't that just mean you spray all over the place and it,
to keep things cool.
yeah.
right, and then it contaminates all the surrounding, yeah. I mean, that was the problem.
But that
Well,
is why.
It would only contaminate if you put it on the toxic stuff coming out. So like imagine like one part of the module's on fire and you're like. You're
Cooling the rest of
cooling the
it,
rest
oh,
of
I
it with
see,
water,
okay.
yeah.
So.
Or adjacent modules, you know, you're spraying it on there to kind of cool it. Seems like some water should be necessary. It's just that what's an
Yeah.
adequate supply, or do we need to define that, or can we refer to
And I did
NFPA?
the NFPA, I don't have my PDF document.
So
Adequate supply of water for fire suppression purposes or according to NFPA?
So we've got water supply under the emergency and hazmat plan section as well. Section 7.
I know there's a water.
So we've got,
I just found that too.
And it just talks about adequate water supply.
so under,
For fire protection unless modified in chapters 9 through 13.
under 7, which is the emergency and hazmat plan.
Yeah,
Number 7, it says, we've got it in here that all utility scale BESS sites shall have the water supply for fire suppression purposes. The quantity of water required for the site shall be calculated by a professional engineer licensed by the state of Colorado. The quantity should be sufficient to serve the fire suppression demands of the worst case scenario modeled in the hazard mitigation
Oh, yeah, I forgot about
facility.
that.
That's it.
Yeah, great.
so we could go with Dave's suggestion to strike it from this section?
Seems redundant.
Okay. All right.
Because I
Strike
read
it from
right
this
in
section.
there, saying the engineer water. supply.
It's in 5.37 and 855 says where the BESS requires a permanent water supply to operate, which it doesn't sound like they do. shall be provided to connections to an on-site water supply in coordination with the International Plumbing Code, or there was self-contained water, so. So that's kind of. probably-
Yeah, because I remember looking at it saying if we have a certified engineer to determine how much water will be required, because last I knew, 20,000 gallons in a big deal, it's pretty much a squirt in the bucket on a real situation. But
So,
I can't make that
Well, wait.
determination, so we use an engineer to do it.
Wait, we can still keep the one sentence that we have in there then, which is that they're
They'll
just
be
responsible for
responsible.
the cost
Yeah,
of whatever the water infrastructure requirements are.
Yeah.
Which we then refer to the requirements in the other part. Right?
I think wherever cisterns are mentioned, that should be stricken. Particularly for industrial. Low requirements for, water services on commercial 500 kW hours greater is 500 to 1,000 gallons a minute. So you're talking 20 minutes and that's gone. So they need to be tied into Frank Campbell, City of Elbert.
With a sufficient size line.
With
sufficient
the
material.
flow test on the hydrant that you're gonna get
i.e. whatever the engineer says.
right.
So I'm just gonna delete, that whole first, I'm just gonna keep water storage in that one sentence that talks about them being responsible for the cost. And then we'll let the water supply, the other section take care of the rest. Okay. All right. We better call it quit.
Yeah, getting kind of late.
Good job.
Want more notes?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wrote that in there. Look,
You want to enter it and then I have something to say. The water.
Yeah. Meeting adjourned.
What were we gonna give us?
I just had a little something to say.